What's up, everybody? This is your girl, Butta B-Rocka, here on Transparency Talks podcast. Listen, we have an amazing show today. We have Miss Darlene Lyons. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today, Butter?
I'm doing really good. We was having some technical difficulties with Facebook. It didn't want to act right. But you know, I always say when there's some trouble coming around, that means some greatness is coming too. So
That's right. That's right, Butter. That's right.
Jesus, we was having a time. So we had to maneuver some things, and it's all good. It's all good. The people that are supposed to hear it is going to hear the word, and it's going to be good. So, Miss Darlene Lyons, you are a motivational speaker, an author, and if I'm not mistaken, you have a book that's coming out tomorrow, correct?
But it's out already on Amazon.
Already. Okay. Can you tell us about your book?
My book is inspirational. It's talking about me and my upbringing, and it talks about me as I go through life. And I have in relationship, mostly marriage. It talks about the trials, the tribulations, and then the success story after that. So it's just like a glimpse of my life. Of course, I couldn't put everything in the book,
right?
But in it has, it just has a lot of. I'm a God person, so I believe in God. So my trials and tribulations, and then the success of how God brought me out. I'm hoping that it will help many people, men and women, if they're going through something, to understand that they can overcome, you know. And my consistency in everything in my life, Butter, has been with God. That's the most consistent thing in my life, even now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So diving in a little bit more about Have a Seat, some of the things that you talk about is overcoming the fear of judgment and shame. I have a book out called Fear of Failure, Fear of Not Trying, which is kind of talking similar. So I definitely can understand, the fear of judgment and shame. Can you expand a little bit about what you meant by overcoming the fear of judgment and shame?
By writing this book, first of all, my fear was that, you're going to be judged, and then the shame of the things that you've endured. The things that happened to you.
Right.
So that was a lot of my fear.
Right.
The shame and the emotional things that it brings. So I just came to a point in my life, and that I have to write this book. And it's a 3-book series. It's not just one book. This is just the first of the 3.
Right.
So by writing this book was like overcoming for me. Mm-hmm. That was my victory.
Yeah.
Because I said, okay, but everything I've been through is, I understand through my faith that is to help somebody else. So a lot of times we don't want to be the trailblazer, but we want the victory at the end. So in order to get the victory, you got to go through the fire. Right. So that's right. Yeah.
So basically your test is now your testimony.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I understand how scary it is putting on pen and pad for everybody to hear your transparency of what was going on in your life. Like I said, I wrote a book as well, and it was terrifying because I was scared of what people would say if they would support it, how they was going to the whole 9 yards. So I absolutely can relate. So in being transparent, one of the things that you mentioned in your book is about overcoming domestic violence. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I married at a really young age, Butter. I married a guy 8 years older than me. I met him in Germany, and I already had a son. I had a son out of wedlock right after high school. Mm-hmm. My book talks about that. And so we had been married for, about 10 months, not quite a year. And I had a baby. And I guess our daughter was about 3 months. So her dad was in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to work that morning. When he left, he knew we were living in California, San Bernardino. And so he knew she only had 1 can of milk. I couldn't drive and we only had 1 car. So of course he had the car. Right. And I didn't know anybody. And he didn't come home that evening. But when he finally came home the next morning at 2:00 in the morning, of course he was drunk or whatever, and he had never ever done this. So he shocked me. Being a 19 going on 20 years old young girl, you know, so I go to the door, open the door, and he hit me. And I fell across the couch, and then he drugged me by my hair and choked, you know, and then he put me up against the refrigerator, choking me by the neck. So he kind of only was like 115 pounds. So, and he messed me up pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I will say that was the first and the last time that ever happened. But I went through it, and he had to hide me, of course, and had I reported it, he would have went to jail. So I went through that, and a lot of times, being that my mom, you know, she was against me marrying in the first place. She wanted me to go back to college, yada, 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 and I didn't. I married him. And so I really couldn't run home, but because it was going to be more, but different, but the same.
Right.
You know, because I would have had to hear it. So I decided to just stay there because it was like two of the lesser evils, you know. And I knew I wasn't going to let him hit me again. So, yeah. So that's a really sad place to be.
Right. Absolutely.
Really sad. Yeah.
Seeing how this was years ago and how vivid you can still remember exactly what happened. You know,
yeah.
It's something that, you know, will continue to be, you know, in your mind and something that you remember. And it definitely has to be, you know, traumatizing, to say the least.
Yes, it is.
You love all of a sudden turns around and doesn't bring food home for the child. And then when you say something, attack you as if you did something wrong. So I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
So was that first time the enough was enough for you?
Yeah, enough was enough as far as that, and I stayed with them, and being that it messed me up. What happened after that, Butter, was one mistake after another. I just kept making bad decisions. And you know, as African Americans, this was back in the 80s. We didn't seek counseling and therapy, but today they do. But when I needed it, I didn't get it. So it just kept leading into worse things. You know, of course, I never loved him after that the same. I had a hate-love for him, but I stayed because of, you know, here I was with a second baby.
Right.
And I've already shamed my family. So I just went through. I really did.
Yeah.
And my book talks about some of the other things that I went through, and it wasn't good. Right. I made one bad decision after another. So, it wasn't,
So where did you find the strength to pick up the pieces?
Oh, man. You know, you mean after the abuse, after that?
Mm-hmm. Once you finally said, I'm done, because...
Okay. So we stayed legally married 7 years. I came out after 6 years. And once I left him, and he filed for divorce, and that was great. And now at this time I think I was on my 5th baby.
Okay.
And I have 6 children.
Right.
I have 6 kids. So I knew they had nobody but me. And my mom was that's another story. She helped, but she helped begrudgingly, if you know what I mean. I mean, if you hadn't made this turn, then you wouldn't be here. Right. You ruined your life. This is the type of feedback I got, and that's why when it first happened, I didn't go, because I knew I would get negative feedback. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have an older sister. I am the oldest. Right.
And that
And
in a sense is a form of abuse too. You know,
it is.
ironic.
It is.
Verbal.
It is. It was. You are. Yes. So it was almost like being beat up all over again.
Wow.
You know, and I went through that for year after year. You know, I was talked about among my family. Oh, she got all them kids, and she ain't girl. She just, you know, I mean, cousins, first cousins, second cousins, aunts. You know, I mean, they great aunts. They just talked about. I was just the title for all of their family gatherings. I stopped going to family gatherings because, you know, when me and my kids would come, you know, it was little whispers everywhere. You know, here they come, they gonna eat. You know, I would dare my kids not to eat. I would feed them before when we did go. I would always feed them before we would get there, and I said, you better not ask for anything to eat when we get here.
Wow.
And it wasn't fair to them.
Right.
You know, it wasn't fair to them, you know. But, you know, and then as my kids got older and they would hear the things that was going on with my family, then they became hateful towards my family. They didn't like them. They said, Mama, you know, and even now, you know, a couple of them, they still have a problem with my family. You know, now my mom is deceased. She died 20 years ago in 2000. So it's been 20 years. But they still have a problem with, you know, with family. So they're learning. I tell them, I say, you have to let it go so they don't have power over you anymore. And they said, Mom, I don't know how you deal with them. I said, because I forgave them. Mm-hmm. And they said I would never amount to anything.
Wow.
You know, they said I would never have anything, you know, because my family ideal of success is you go to school, you go to college, you get a bachelor's degree, you find a good husband, and you build a house and put a white fence around it. That's the end of life.
Right. You got to include the dog with it, with the little dog.
Yeah, with the little dog.
Right.
You know, that's success. That's success for them. And I'm all out the box when it comes to my family. Mm-hmm. You know, I have my associate's degree, but honey, the things I've done with little to no.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Wow.
So this book is, these books in my life and the things I've accomplished is, you know, my talk show, all of these things I've done with little to no education.
Right.
You know, to their standards.
Right.
But I have a life doctorate degree. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know what it is to be hungry. You know what I'm saying? To not eat so my kids would have enough. Mm-hmm. You know, we lived in neighborhoods that took over 75% of my income, Butter. You know why? Because it wasn't their fault.
Right.
So I struggled really hard financially for a long time. I lived right here in Atlanta for 16 years. After my, you know what I'm saying? After my divorce, I went on because I was not going to allow my kids to be raised in a small town. I know there's nothing wrong with small towns, but it must be something that you desire. I grew up in that, and I didn't want my kids to have any parts of that. I didn't want my neighbors next door, you know, to know everything that happened 3 years ago, and they still talking about it.
Right.
You know, so that's what small towns are good, but they're also crippling. That's just my point of view. Yeah.
Wow. So one of the things you just mentioned, you know, you might not have, you have an associate's degree, but you got that doctor of life degree. You have definitely done amazing things. I mean, I was reading over your bio and I was like, okay, all right. You're the host of Tabletop and More with Darlene. You're host of Vibes with Darlene on Jericho podcast. You're the founder and president of RDL Private Utility, and you're the only female owner.
Yes, in the region, southeastern region that we know of. It may be another one, but I don't know her.
Wow. So can you tell us what is the RDL Private Utility? I don't personally know.
RDL Private Utility Locating LLC is a company that we We locate utilities underground, from phone to water to your sewer, internet, all of that, lights, gas, water. And we do map research, and we do it for survey companies. Like, before you build these subdivisions, well, we're one of the companies outside of 811. Anything outside of that, you have to hire a private locating company such as mine to come out and identify what's under the ground, so they'll know how to tie it in to the new subdivision that they're getting ready to build for each house.
Wow.
And we do map research, and sometimes we don't have maps, but we go out and we do with our equipment. It helps us. And we also do, what we call, I can't even think of the word, but anyway, we always say that this is information, but we're not saying that it's always perfect, accurate. But if we can't find something, we'll let you know. And so we always, make sure that we let our clients know that. Mm-hmm. But most of the times, we're pretty much on point. We've never had a cut. So
and this is something that you founded, that you're the president.
Yes, ma'am. This is something I started out. I'm kind of skipping ahead, but I was divorced from my ex-husband for how many years? For a long time, and then we came back together. Legally, I think, in 2008, and that was a mistake, but we started one together, which was his. He's a locator. He was a locator. And so that business just took off. I didn't know anything about the industry. And so we started it together, but, and I packed up, and my book talks about all of this. It'll give you way more details. I was working for Delta, and we just, once we got this huge, he got it started, he asked me to leave and come up there to help him. And so he paid me half of my salary that I made at Delta. I said, if you do that, we're gonna pack up like the Beverly Hillbillies and move up there with you. And so that's what me and the kids did. My oldest three were already grown at this time. The youngest three was still high school and middle school. And so I learned the lingo. So he made a lot of money. He made over $1 million, so dollars. He became a millionaire. But anyway, of course, at this point, I'm not, the business owner. So I'm trying to give ideals and things like that. And he said, hey, this is not your company. This is mine. So I was waiting on the real man to show up, and, so here we, so it eventually ran out. And so a year after that, I started in 2015, I started my own company. And so 100% mine. And eventually he came to work for me.
Wow.
Yeah, he accepted me. At first he was angry, but then he accepted me. And so he's one of the best locators that I know. But I think it was just kind of like a pride thing. Like now, now she makes all the calls.
Right.
But, so, and the book talks about that a little too. Yeah.
That's a good twist. Didn't expect that. All right. The tables have turned, and now you work for me.
Yeah. And I try not, I've tried not to act like that because, now we get along,
Right.
But it took a long time to get where we are.
Yeah.
We're just like best friends.
Yeah.
We knew that we shouldn't have remarried, but we did. Being that I'm walking with God. I'm like, I can't just be up here all willy-nilly. And it wasn't like I was in love or anything like that, but it was just a lot of unopened, a lot of doors that was left not closed. And I guess I just needed closure. So I got it, but I couldn't get back where we were over 34 years ago. I couldn't find myself, and he was like, I don't understand. I said, well, too much water's under the bridge. So we eventually just agreed that it was just best. So after like 3 years or so, we just let it go. And so now we're just best friends.
Okay. So, can you talk a little bit about you being your host of Tabletop and more?
Tabletop and more started up 4 years ago, and when it first started, I was on PTWWN TV here in Alpharetta, Georgia. A network over there. It was a spiritual thing, and so we were able to get a deal, and so I was on their network for this is 4 years. So I've been gone from there a year, and so I was on there about a little over 2 years. And so after I left, just some things we just couldn't agree on, and I had put a lot of money into my brand. So I set out for, I set out the year that after I left them. Now I'm mumbling. So after I left them in December of that year, the following year, I just started doing stuff on my own, traveling, doing my own thing. And this past year, Tabletop hasn't been up and running, but that's getting ready to change.
Okay.
So this fall, we'll be back this fall.
And host of Vibes with Darlene, what type of show is that?
Okay, so Jericho is an internet radio station that's been around for 20 years. It's owned by Roy Evans. He's the founder and owner of that internet radio station. And I came on as like a night DJ. And so just pretty much just playing the music and talking to, how DJs do. And so I did that. I did that for a while, and so we're getting ready to start that back up.
So where can people find this amazing book, Have a Seat?
They can find it at my About Me link / Darlene Lyons or Amazon.com.
Okay. And how do people get in contact with you for speaking or other engagements?
Oh, they can call me at 704-605-0225, or they can email me at tabletalk910@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I just want to let you know that this has been an amazing interview, and I am so glad that I got a chance to meet you. I'm definitely going to have to check out your book, and I wish you much success with your book. I do think that it is a book that is going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
Not a problem. So with that being said, we are signing off, and it is a pleasure to see you, and talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.